Hi folks, I hope you're all well. It's Paul from ModCon here with a short review video on the recent release by the Polish company Lukgraph of their Halberstadt D.II World War I fighter. To begin with, I can let you know that this model is being made across 3 of the major scales, so it will be available in 48 scale, 32nd and also 24th scale, which should be quite something as it will certainly offer the kit to a greater number of modelers. So let's see what's available in the box. And first up, some very nicely reproduced PE parts, and these include lengths of stitching, strut anchor points and seat belts. There's also a length of metal rod which should be trimmed into 2 sections, and these will be the wing root supports for the lower wing. There are also parts for the wing walkways which go on the top of the lower wing in at the fuselage, and I think the combination of these parts will look very smart on the model. And next up are the markings, and these comprise the national markings, instrument panel dials and various other small stencils, as well as 2 letter H's and letter S's, although neither of these are included in the colour schemes suggested in the instruction and painting booklet, but may be useful if, like me, you like to delve into the internet and other publications by way of providing an alternative colour scheme for your models. So now it's time to see the actual parts that make up the model, and these are a mixture of resin and 3D printed pieces. Firstly, the wing parts. The rib detail on all of these pieces is very well reproduced, and there are metal rods embedded in the resin to provide strength to the wings. This part here is the left upper wing, and on the right wing, the thin covering where the radiator should go will require to be removed to allow insertion of that part, which is visible now on the screen. The dark marks on the wings denote the metal strengtheners, but these should not be visible after the colour scheme has been applied. The ailerons are provided separately, and care should be taken when removing them from the resin plinths. On the lower wing, at the left side, there is also the compass location point, and these various aspects can be seen here. Now we can have a look at 3D printed parts. First out the box is this length of copper wire, and it will be cut into smaller sections to fit into the undercarriage struts when they attach to the fuselage in order to give them some extra degree of strength. These parts appear to be a forest of thin delicate stems, and indeed they are, but the items they support are beautifully produced. So first out of the wrapper here, the first grouping is to do with the cockpit area, and it involves the frame and the cockpit floor. And facing forward as indicated by my index finger, you can see the forward sections of the floor and the frame round about them, and there's also the engine mounts and the back plate to come up in this section shortly, and the very delicate stems that support everything while they're in this grouping. Just a little care is needed to carefully remove them, and where there's any residue, just tidy them up as normal. But remember, because it's resin, you're better to use a face mask so you don't breathe in the dust if you're having to sand things into a smoother appearance. The next grouping is the fuel tank, and this here is the ammunition box. And next up, the pilot seat and the cushion to go with it round here, and just at the front, the instrument panel. I never cease to amaze how so much and such delicate parts can be put together without, I don't know, I don't understand 3D printing, so it's just a total marvel to me that this can be done. And here is the one-piece engine, again beautifully reproduced, and some care needs to be taken to remove this without damaging it, but I'm quite sure once painted up it will look very nice indeed. And now the wheels, which look very sturdy. I actually have some leftovers from the Wingnut Wings Albatross B.II reconnaissance aircraft, and although they're plastic, they do have the spokes, and I thought if I could find a colour scheme where the aircraft has spoked wheels, that might be a good thing to substitute. This is the radiator for the top wing, and this piece here is part of the engine, and there's something down the bottom there, I don't know what it is. I'll probably find out at the last minute when I've forgotten to add it in about 10 stages before. And these pieces are the access panels that will go on the fuselage at various points, and various other small sundry parts. I don't know quite where all of them go at present, but I'll find out in due course, no doubt. This is the external exhaust pipe that runs along the right side of the fuselage, and the other piece there is the exhaust collector pipes, which would have been physically attached to the engine. And in this section, last but not least, the one-piece propeller, and very nice it looks too. So coming up now, the struts for the wings. These parts are well produced, and they have small openings around the top of each strut. I'm not quite sure if that's to add in bits of metal rod to give them strength, or whether it's to do with the PE attachment brackets, but it may well be both for all I know, but they're nicely produced. but this one here is for the undercarriage, and it's the two V-shaped sets of struts either side and the spar in the middle, and unfortunately one of the V-shaped struts was damaged when I got the kit, but I don't think that should be a particular problem to get it back together and suitably attached to the model. In due course. And next up, we are going to go to the last of the 3D parts, I think. I'm keeping this lot in the bag because they are very delicate. They're to do with the tail skid and the attachment for the horizontal, no, the other one, the vertical tail. The vertical tail acted as the rudder in its entirety, and the horizontal tail planes acted as the elevators in their entirety. And you'll see these parts coming up now. I'll take a couple of these out the bag for you. I think the vertical tail is really nicely produced. It's very thin at the trailing edge here, and there are traces of the frame built into the resin casting. It's really a very nice piece of work. And the other parts, I'll take one of them out, and they will be the horizontal pieces. Here's one of them here, horizontal tailplane pieces, acting as the elevators. So that should all go together quite nicely. But undoubtedly, the really nice part of the kit is the fuselage. And here are these parts, very nicely rendered. A subtle representation of the frame on the rear fuselage, and indeed throughout the fuselage sides. This one here will get some of the stitching from the PE fret, and here are the other frame lines towards the back of the fuselage visible as well. Here, just at my finger, is an area that will be removed to accommodate the machine gun, and the small circular area as well will be taken out because that's the area where the exhaust pipe comes out from the engine. These indentations here are where some of the smaller panels will be taken from the 3D printed parts and inserted into position. Obviously, the most delicate part of this operation is to tidy up the slightly rough edge along the join lines in such a way that you don't damage any of the rest of the detail. But I think once this is all put together, it will really look very smart indeed. So next up, I'm going to take you through page by page the instruction manual, and you'll see how the kit goes together. The front page of the manual gives you some information about the aircraft and its introduction into the German Air Force, and also some technical details. And inside the first page you have the layout of the 3D parts, and they're highlighted both on that page and each section as you go through so that you can remove them properly from their grouping. This first page shows the cockpit area and how it should be put together, along with the fuel tank, the pilot seat, etc. And on the left side here we have the instrument panel detail as well. I find the manual is very well laid out and it's easy to follow. On this page, the engine, the Mercedes D.II, is detailed, as well as the engine mounts and small indications as to where some fuse wire could perhaps be used to detail the engine slightly more. And then this page shows the whole assembly of the engine and the cockpit framing together, as well as some detail for the machine gun and the ammunition boxes. And on the next page we have the diagram showing how the pieces fit into the fuselage, and there's also a warning in this page to encourage you to ensure that the cockpit floor is properly lined up so that it doesn't cause any issue when you're drawing the fuselage halves together. And here on the lower page you can see the red indicators as to where the parts from the PE fret should be attached onto the fuselage. And next up we have the tailplane and the undercarriage, again with further indicators as to where PE parts should be attached. And also on the lower page you'll be able to note where the rods should be inserted into the lower fuselage, which will act as the connection point for the lower wing. There's also a suggestion that some binding should be attached around the contact points of the undercarriage spar and struts in order to improve the appearance. And now some advice as to what struts to use in what positions, and in this case it's the wing struts, and there are various PE parts indicated for attachment, but the one I like here is the view of the aircraft head-on, which shows that there was no anhedral or dihedral on the wings. They should all sit completely neutral, including the horizontal tail. And now we're moving into the territory of doing the rigging, and my first glance over these parts would suggest that there are no holes drilled for rigging, so I'll need to check carefully where these holes should go, and I would be using turnbuckles to attach the rigging as well. The instructions for the rigging are quite extensive, which is good. It gives you even the detail here on the lower right side of the top page, how the rigging should go together at the back of the undercarriage. And there's one side indicated here in yellow for the rigging wires, and of course you would replicate that on the opposite side as well. So with these three suggested colour schemes at the back of the manual, that's this video complete. I hope you have enjoyed looking in on the review. It seems a really nice kit to build, and I will be bringing this to you in due course. Until then, I will be working on the Heinkel 111 and V1 combination, and I hope to have that ready maybe in a few weeks' time. Until then, look after yourselves, and I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks again for looking in. Cheers. Bye.